Hi, my name is Christiane Newmo, and the person that I chose for my presentation contribution is Elizabeth Ross Haynes. Elizabeth Ross Haynes is an African American activist, a writer, and an administrator. Her work was mostly focused on Black women's rights and advocating for their right to education. Elizabeth Ross Haynes was born July 30, 1883 in Mount Wheeling, Alabama. Her parents were former slaves Henry and Mary Haynes Ross. When her father served Union Army, he used his pay to purchase land, and through hard work he converted the property into a huge plantation. Elizabeth's parents valued education, and they knew she was an intelligent child, so they made sure that she received the best possible education. She was a valedictorian in her class in State Normal School of Montgomery. The State Normal School is a great institution and is doing a great work for Southern African Americans. After doing well in State University, she won a scholarship to go to Fisk University as seen in this picture, and there she received her AB in 1903. She valued most of the education that she got and decided to go to a graduate program. Between 1905 and 1907, she spent her summers attending graduate school at the University of Chicago. While in graduate school, she worked largely among African American college students and traveled extensively to provide detailed account of student life. In the early 20th century, progressive era reformers largely ignored the needs for African American women. Lacking settlement houses and other resources among African American reformers, Elizabeth Ross Haynes turned to one of the few institutions available to them, the YWCA. In 1924, Haynes became the first Black woman elected to the National Board of the YWCA. The organization is slightly segregated, and she had to fight for leadership opportunities. YWCA is a non-profit organization dedicated in eliminating racism, empowering women, and promoting peace, justice, and freedom and dignity for all. In the following year, she earned his master's in sociology from Columbia University. And then, in 1922, she published a watershed study on Black women in employment entitled 2 Million Negro Women at Work. In fact, this was her thesis at Columbia University. She later met and married sociologist George Haynes and had a son, George Jr., in 1912. George Haynes was the co-founder of the National Urban League. Like Elizabeth, he yearned to make a difference for African American workers as well. The National Urban League played its role in the 20th century when the U.S. Supreme Court declared its approval of segregation. They supported the African American people by the brutal system of the economic, social, and political oppression of the white South, when it quickly rapidly transformed. Haynes' work focused on the services for women and African Americans during the early 1900s and beyond. She was especially interested in women's labor issues and decided much of her professional career to researching, writing, and speaking on this subject. Elizabeth Ross Haynes was at the forefront of developing institutional resources for young African American women seeking better employment and living conditions. Her commitment to social work on behalf of her race and activist community was her involvement. Elizabeth wasn't content to just report the problems of Black women in labor. She fought to alleviate them. Along with several prominent African American women including Mary Church Terrell and Elizabeth Carter, she petitioned an International Congress of Working Women to offer programs to the relevance of Black women in 1919. In 1921, she wrote a book called Unsung Heroes, which details African Americans' lives and achievements. It is a collection of stories that, in spite of hardships and struggles, African Americans rose above the fight what they believed in. In 1952, at the age of 69, she wrote another book called The Black Boy of Atlanta, It is a biography of Major Richard Robert Wright, a college president and a banker. These are just one of the few and many books that she wrote about African American struggles. For a little fun fact, she was among one of the first black women leaders in the National Association of Colored Women to become a New Deal Democrat and was active in the Harlem politics. She became co-leader of Harlem's 21st Assembly District in 1935. In November of 1935, she was elected as a co-leader of New York's 21st Assembly District. In this role, she energetically tackled numerous concerns including unemployment, assistance to the elderly, soldiers' and widows' pension, delinquency, and legislation. By 1936, she was the member of the Colored Division of the National Democratic Speakers Bureau, along with several prominent African American women, including Mary Church Terrell and Elizabeth Carter. She was petitioned at the International Congress of Working Women to offer programs of relevance to black women. One of her hopes was to realize when the Council of Interracial Cooperation, organized in 1920, Haynes became the first black woman elected at the National Board of YWCA. The organization was highly segregated and she had to fight for leadership opportunities. One of her hopes was realized when the Council of Interracial Cooperation, CIC, was organized in Atlanta in 1920. One of their focus is to practice diversity and awareness to the communities of our land today. Throughout the 1930s, Haynes carried out several important studies for the U.S. Department of Labor of African American women employment. As a new loyal Deal Democrat, and used her intelligence and education to further the cause of black women's workers. Haynes died on October 26, 1953 in New York City.